Pergi, sini.
Okay, so in today's class, we will try to discuss some more concepts like developing OData app service with CRUD operations, so what I'll try to do is we will try to develop a OData app service without using any BAPI or without using any RFC. We'll try to develop OData app service without using a BAPI or without using RFC. So, first of all, just observe. In today's class, I'll try to go with one requirement, just observe. So from the front end, hello students, can you hear me? Hello students, can you hear me? Yeah, okay. So from the front end, the situation can be like this. So from front end applications, from Sap Ui5 or can be from Fiori, whatever. So there may be some screen which will take some input. There is some screen and it may give some input here, for example, user ID. And if I click on some search button, I want to get that particular record into a form. So when we develop our front-end screens, it may be like this. User ID equal to some input, and there can be some search button, and when user click on search button, I should get the output record into a form. I should get output record into a form. So in order to do that, first of all, we need to develop one OData app service here. We have to develop OData app service. And inside this service, I want to implement, to handle this, I want to implement the code inside getEntity method. I want to write the code inside getEntity method. Inside getEntity method, what we can do is we can use some input parameters here. IT underscore key tab is one of the input parameter which will receive input values coming from front end. IT key tab, one second, Praveen. Okay. So IT key tab is one of the standard parameter. By using this parameter, we can receive some input from the front end. And we are going to write our select query here. After executing select query, we need to send our output record to the front end. We need to send output record to the front end, So that is possible by using ER entity parameter. IT key tab is the input parameter. That means it is going to receive the data from the front end. And ER entity is the standard parameter to send output record to the front end. And in between these two things, you can write your select statement to fetch the data. So I mean to say, get entity set is a method. And what you can do is you can accept the input from the front end. You can accept some input from the front end here, and then you can execute your select statement. After that, you can send your output record to the front end form. We can send output record to the front end UI5 or Fiori application. So let us implement this functionality now. And before doing that, let me tell you, get entity. Get entity is a method. It's a standard method. It is a standard method of OData ABAP service, and then I can say this method contains two important parameters. This method contains two important parameters. One is like something like IT underscore key tab. The second one is like ER entity. Second one is ER entity. First one IT key tab, second one is ER entity. So as I told you, IT key tab is responsible for it is responsible for receiving input from front-end applications. It is responsible for receiving input from front-end applications like UI5 or Fiori. And you can see here ER entity. ER entity, and it is responsible for sending output to front-end application. And most importantly, it will send maximum one single record to front-end application in this method, from this method to UI5 or Fiori. So let us utilize get entity method in today's class. And in this method, you will understand how to take the input and how to give the output record. So you can see now, first of all, let me open one. Let me open S11. In S11, you can see there is a table. There is a table with Z user info. There is a table with Z user info. So that user info table contains some fields here. It contains some fields here: user ID, first name, last name, email ID, phone number, country, salary, etc. It contains some fields here. And so these fields, I want to use it in our OData service, and you can see there are some records here. You can see there are some records here, like Raju, Vijay, Kiran, Ramesh, Satish. There are some records here. So this particular table, I want to use it for fetching the data. So as part of step 1, what you need to do is create one project. I want to create one separate project, that means a separate service to explain all the CRUD operations. You can create project with the default settings, and then next step is create an entity type, and an entity set with a DDIC structure, something like Z user info I'm using. And you can choose required fields and select one of the field as key field, and then save and continue. Then next step. So let me do these things first. I'm just creating one project here. So it will create some folders here. It will create some folders like data model, service implementation, runtime artifacts, service maintenance, etc., etc. Now, here under data model, what you can do is you can right click and you can import a DDIC structure for creating the fields. I'm selecting EMP as one of the entity type here. It's the name of the entity type I'm using, and DDIC structure is Z user info. It's the structure I'm using which contains our required fields. Along with entity type, you can create an entity set. It's a routine process. Along with entity type, you can create an entity set. So it's a routine process here. Then you can click on next. And you can choose the required fields here. Whatever is required for us, you can select here. You can choose the required fields and make sure that one of the field must be a key field. So don't forget that. You have to make sure that one of the field is a key field. So let me click on that. I'm just making, for example, user ID as a key field here. I'm making user ID as a key field. Just click on finish. And so because of that, you will get entity type with some fields here. They are nothing but properties at OData service level. And you will get entity set as well. You'll get entity set as well. So now what you need to do is you need to save it before writing the code. There is no mapping now. I want to write the code for this particular requirement. Then definitely first you need to generate runtime objects. you have to generate runtime object CR. So, one second. Soumendra, I think you are connecting from two different sessions. Soumendra. There are two people with some same name. One second. Hello students, just stay back. So after creating entity type entity set, then we need to generate runtime object. So let me show that here. Let me write first. So generates classes along with metadata. Along with metadata. Then okay. And who is this Surya? Who is this Surya?
Hi, sir.
What's your name?
Sir, my name is Parthasarthi, but
Okay.
Surya has...
Okay.
Yeah.
Hello students, please try to log in with actual names because here management will be monitoring these things, because whatever the person who has logged into this GoToMeeting ID will be registered in one separate file in our operating system. So after
Sir,
that
how
class,
can I change my name?
while trying to connect to your GoToMeeting, it will ask for some email ID or some name.
It's
When
already
you
taken for the first time, but again and again it's not asking.
okay, just try to cross-check from Google how to do that. Most of the people are able to do it. And
Okay.
Ashish, you have connected from both browsers. So let me generate runtime objects here. You can see I'm trying to save it in a package. So after this, you can see you are able to get entity set, but you can see there are runtime artifacts generated. So I won't write the code, so directly you can go to DPC extension class now. You can go to DPC extension class, double click that, and here you can see for our entity set, there is a separate method generated. So in our case, you can see these are the CRUD methods, and for our entity set, there is one separate method generated as getEntity. So in today's class, I want to write some piece of code inside getEntity method to fetch a record based on some input. So this getEntity always returns only single record, either 0 or 1 record maximum. So let me redefine that method. So you can see now there is getEntity. Just try to redefine that method. When you redefine, it will try to open the implementation. So it will open implementation. Then you can see now in this particular method there are two important parameters which I told you in the beginning of today's class. So one of the important parameters is you can see IT key tab. IT key tab is one of the parameter and it is a importing parameter, so it can receive the input from the front end. It is a importing parameter, so it can receive the input from the front end. And you can see there is ER entity. It is an exporting parameter. You can send the record to the front end. It is an exporting standard parameter, so you can send the record to the front end. So parameters will play a vital role. So let me do that now. So let me use these two parameters here. So let me write some simple coding. So I'm just using one work area for capturing the input value. I'm declaring one here to capture input value coming from front end. And you can declare this one by using type /iwbep/s_mgw name value pair. So this is a standard structure type for work area when you are capturing the input from the front end. /iwbep/smgw name value pair is a standard structure which can be used for declaring a work area while getting the input from the front end. So what I can do is now I can use read table statement. Read table, I can read the input field values from IT key tab. As I told you, that is a standard parameter. I need to capture a specific input value coming from front end from IT key tab into work area key tab. From IT key tab to work area key tab, we are capturing the input coming from the front end with some index 1. So after doing this, we can just write our select statement here, something like select singles from so-and-so table, Z user info table into corresponding fields of something like ER entity. Into corresponding fields of ER entity I'm using, that's it. So when you write this type of statement, I can say, technically, this is what happens. So this is a code we are writing now. So this is a code we are writing at OData service level. But here, if you closely observe this code, we are not passing any input. We need to pass some input here, so I can use like where clause. I can use a where clause where user ID is the input that will come from front end into work area. So I can use work area key tab hyphen its value. That's it. So work area key tab contains the input value coming from front end, and we are passing it to a select statement here. Contains the input coming from front end, and we are passing it to select statement. So now let me give a screenshot here to understand this behavior. So in simple words, this is our OData service now. This is our OData ABAP service now. Of course, you can write some more conditions and etc. But this is the main code as of now. And what exactly happens from the front end is from UI5 or Fiori or whatever, I can say, so what happens is user will give some input here. As I told you in the first diagram also, user will provide some input. For example, user ID is the input. So I can say that input value will definitely reach your work area key tab from, it will reach your IT key tab automatically. So don't forget that basic point here. So whichever value comes from the front end, it will automatically reach IT key tab because IT key tab is a importing parameter. So what we are trying to do, from IT key tab, we are sending it to something like work area key tab, and we are passing that work area key tab somewhere in our select query in where clause. But I can say after executing select statement, the output record will come to ER entity, so that ER entity will send the record to the front end. ER entity is responsible to send the output record to the front end, so you can use it in a form or table or whatever. This is for output. So only two things which are important in this coding, IT key tab and ER entity. Even in real time also, these are important. So you need to know what are the key parameters, and then you have to implement your further ABAP coding in OData services. In OData services, as a developer, you can use all your ABAP techniques, but along with the important parameters. So that's the code we have written here, and the description is already given here, IT key tab and ER entity. So now what I can do is open data provider extension class and just try to implement the code inside get entity method. You can implement the code inside get entity method. So for experimentation, let me give this to you. So that's a code. Then next step, you can activate the entire DPC extension class. You can activate the entire DPC extension class, then register the service. Register the service, and last step is you can test the service. So let us do that. So what I mean to say is, with this example I can say inside OData service, BAP is not compulsory. So that is also one of the points that you need to notice. I started my OData development with a BAPI, but BAPI is not compulsory every time. You can write other ABAP statements whenever necessary. So don't think OData services means BAPI related services. Don't think like that. You can use any ABAP statement inside OData service. You can write directly select statement, insert, delete, update. You can use a BAPI or a function, etc. So you can go back now, and you can see here there is a service maintenance, and just try to register the service. Service maintenance, and you can register the service here. So I'm using a local category, and you can see here I'm saving it in a package. So I'm trying to save it in a package. So just continue. So you should get some green color status here. Even when you register a service, you should get some green color status, and after that you can go for gateway client. So definitely there will be HTTP request and HTTP response. So let me write that. Use the below syntax while testing OData service. Use the below syntax while testing OData service. So you can see now I'm using this. You can use your service path. After that, you can provide your entity set name in the bracket. In the bracket, you have to provide your input field value. For example, I want to get the record based on 1003 as a user ID, so that you can pass the input here. So input should be in single quotes under brackets. So that is the syntax we generally follow when you test this particular. So when you test a service with this one, automatically I can say your framework will execute get entity method. So the execution of the methods depends on which syntax you are using while testing service. Your execution of a method depends on how you pass the input. So which syntax you are using in the front end, or while testing the service, which type of syntax you are using, depending upon that, the framework will execute your corresponding method. So that is a point you need to notice. If you pass like this, definitely it will execute get entity method. The framework will automatically execute. You need not say anything. It will automatically execute get entity method. So in the coming classes, you'll get more clarity. In which situation, which method is executed, you'll get after a few examples. But at present, I can say, if you pass, while testing a service, if you pass like this with a below syntax, then get entity method is guaranteed to be executed. That means you can see now. So I'm providing our entity set name. I'm providing entity set name. For example, in our case, the entity set is EMP set. EMP set, and we did not write the code in get entity set method. We did not write the code in get entity set method. So if you directly execute now with this approach, you will get the error. If you directly provide entity set, then the framework automatically tries to execute get entity set method, but get entity set method is not implemented by a developer now. So that's what I'm saying. Based on the input, based on the manner in which you pass the URL, based on that it will decide which method to be executed. If I just provide entity set name, definitely it will execute get entity set method, and get entity set method is not executed, so definitely you should get error here. You can see the error. It is clearly saying. So I can say you'll get this error. When you try to provide just entity set name, then it will try to execute get entity set method, but it is not implemented in this service, so you'll get the error. You'll get some error like this, 500 or something like that, but ultimately you'll get some error. So you are getting this error. Why? Because whenever you provide entity set directly, it will try to execute get entity set method. But in today's class, I did not implement that method, so you are getting this error. So first of all, let me just give some idea here. If I provide like this, service path slash just entity set name. So in this case, the framework automatically executes get entity set method. It will execute get entity set method. So that is how the framework is designed by SAP. So if get entity set is not implemented by you, then you will get the error. That is a point I want to convey. Now, let us go to our actual scenario. My actual scenario is I want to provide entity set name, I want to provide some input, then I want to test the service whether it is fetching the data or not. So entity set in the bracket you can provide in single quotes, for example, 1003. So now you can see there is no problem. We are able to get that record. There is no problem. Status code is success. So I can say it's trying to execute our get entity method when you're passing some input in single quotes in the brackets. After entity set in the brackets, if you pass some input, it will automatically execute get entity method. And in our case, we have implemented that method for today, so we are able to get the record. So first name Vijay, ca.com, phone number, country, salary, user ID 1003. So this is a record we are expecting. And if I provide, for example, 1004, then you can see there is another record. First name is Raju at ca.com. And 1005, so there is no such record. 1005, there is no such record. Resource not found. Resource not found means there is no record with this particular input. You can see 1006, there is another record with first name Raju, user ID 1006. So you can see that. 1054 is having first name Satish, country US, salary 50,000. So that is what you need to understand now. While testing, for example, you can use this. So it will fetch the record based on specific input provided. When you provide something like this, it will fetch the record based on specific input. And you can see, for example, it can be like this. So it will fetch a specific record based on a specific input. So please notice that. Now let me put a breakpoint and let us understand what is happening when we pass the input. I want to put a breakpoint and I want to analyze which record is coming to ER entity and which value is coming as an input to IT key tab. So it's very simple. If you want to debug, so debugging OData ABAP services. So this concept is same as ABAP. Debugging OData ABAP service is same as debugging general ABAP applications, ABAP programs or ABAP applications, whatever. There won't be much change, but as a trainer, I should show that to everyone. So let me just execute service with a breakpoint. First, let me go to DPC extension class. I'm going to DPC extension class. And you can see now, so here we have written the code, that is get entity is a method, contains a code. So let me open that. And you can see now, I just want to put a breakpoint when select statement is executed. You can see, select that statement and set an external breakpoint here. You can just put an external breakpoint, you'll get some stop symbol here with external breakpoint. So it's very simple. Open get entity method implementation and enable or set external breakpoint, set or enable external breakpoint and go to gateway client and test the service. So that's the general procedure. So you can see, after enabling a breakpoint, I am searching with, for example, 1003 as input, and when I execute the service now, you can see it is executing our service, and automatically whenever breakpoint is encountered, it opens ABAP debugger. It is just opening ABAP debugger. You can see it on my screen, and the breakpoint has stopped the execution. And as a developer, I want to know what is coming to work area key tab. I want to know what is coming to work area key tab. And I want to know what is coming to ER entity. Then it's very simple. You can provide here work area key tab hyphen value. So you can see 1003 is the input which we have provided while testing this service. And I want to know which record is coming to ER entity. So ER entity is like a work area. So you can go to structures option here. You can go to structures option and you can see here ER entity. And this is what we are getting based on the input. 1003 Vijay at ca.com, all 6 India 60,000, something like that. And you can see as a developer, we have provided some input. We have provided an input as 1003, so we are able to trace it out. So this debugging screen is same like your normal ABAP debugging program, normal ABAP debugging applications. So let me write a note. When breakpoint is encountered, automatically the service execution is stopped. So as a developer, we can trace out the values, something like input value or whatever value, output record, whatever you want to trace out, you can trace out here once breakpoint is encountered. So when breakpoint is encountered, I can say automatically what is happening. ABAP debugger is open, don't forget that. ABAP debugger is open and automatically the service execution will be stopped. So when service execution stops, as a developer, you can trace out your input values, output values, and you can cross-check whether it is giving right input or not. You can check whether getting the data successfully or not. So that is how you can utilize. So now let me give some simple note here. In the interviews they may ask you when get entity method will be executed. They may ask you a question like this. When get entity method is executed by framework. It's very simple. When you provide your entity set with something in the bracket, with some input, then automatically your get entity method is executed. And they may ask you a question like this. Under which circumstances get entity set is executed? In the coming class also we are going to use it with different options. So the answer is very simple. When you pass directly entity set name. When you pass entity set name, in that situation get entity set is executed. And there are few more scenarios which will come in the coming classes. So that is nothing but if you provide entity set name with question mark dollar, something like select. In that situation also get entity set method is executed. And there is one more situation. We are going to cover all those things. Entity set name, and you can use something like question mark with search equal to some input. In that situation also get entity set method is executed. Mark search equal to some input value. In that situation also get entity set is executed. And entity set name question mark dollar filter equal to some input 1 comma input 2, etc., etc. So in that situation also your get entity set method is executed. So I hope now you can understand. So how framework behaves, that totally depends on how you pass the parameters and how you utilize the syntax. So these are hard-coded, these are hard-code principles. It is not designed by me, it is designed by SAP. So if the URL is like this, then the framework is designed in such a way that it will execute X method. If the URL is something like another parameter, then the framework is designed in such a way that it will execute Y method. So please notice that based on the parameters, based on the service URL parameters, the method execution will happen. So let me write a simple conclusion for today's class. Based on the service URL syntaxes, based on the service URL syntaxes, the framework will execute corresponding method in OData concept. So the other URLs, there are other service URLs with some different syntaxes I am going to cover in the coming classes. But my main purpose is to tell you that based on the service URL syntax, the method execution will change. Okay, so please notice that. Hello students, are you able to follow now? If you have any doubts, you can ask me now. Are you able to follow yesterday's class and today's? Hello students, are you able to follow, or